other hand of that. They were just shown it, but we had this yesterday. We had this in series that we saw of most recent play day where sometimes if it's...
okay.
Sometimes their map's their map. G2, making things uncomfy.
This is interesting because it's not really a Wolves map, so I feel like you're trying to push towards a target ban almost here, will make things a bit strange. I see a Thermite ban come through, and I think about the main focus on Geisha Wall that we see so many teams using the Thermite for. I think it means you are going to see the Ace being brought along in basically every single round here for getting the jobs done that a Thermite might otherwise do. Hibana just a little bit too focused there with the X-Kairos. Obviously not as big a hole, requires quite a bit more of the charges to get done, so Ace is just generally quite a safe bet. Thinking about it was quite an interesting chat I was having with Doki the other day as well when I asked him, okay, how is Fabian as a coach? And he was saying, in a way, when we brought Fabian in, we didn't need him to tell us how to play. And I kind of gave him that look of, are you sure? And he was like, no, seriously. Obviously, he'll give us some ideas that we can use, but he's there to maintain discipline. He's there to motivate us. That's what he's there for. Rather than to be a micro gameplay coach. So, again, you will have seen those words coming out of him during the break, and hopefully it is enough. G2 start on the attack inside. Let's see if we have 5 players playing as a team and not 5 players just running around like we saw at times on Bank.
Discipline, discipline, discipline.
Yes.
Mr. Fabian is
He likes discipline.
Oh, yeah, we worked with him
discipline
for a while. We've seen him shout.
Oh, yes.
More than maybe, more than others. But no, it's what they needed. You didn't need us, you didn't need them, you didn't need anyone to say other than that's what was always lacking from G2. And as you sort of put it before, that G2 we saw on that map felt like pre-Fabian G2. Felt like a G2 that was just a little bit loosey-goosey. G2, as you said, on the attack, see if they can get 3 for a half, see if they can start with a bang, and the bang might be built behind Blur on Ossa.
Okay, this could actually be a pretty fast push coming in here as well, so they've got a couple stacked up on the window. Thought we might see a bit of a faster move in, but nope. Blur is going to be the focal point of this round. Imagine you'll see him starting to work things out more towards Shrine Balcony and work his way in from there. Plays on the window here on the Ossa, also not a bad shout on the Repel, for example, looking in towards Karaoke itself. But already based on where you can see the outlines of these G2 players, the goal is no doubt going to be taking control of Shrine Balcony, getting in top black and looking for a plant inside of Karaoke.
We start to hear the whir and the whiz of all of the pressure and control on the players. They're looking for the hunt, and the hunt is Bibu's. Takes care of the first. Bibu is removing Benja. Getting some of that control underneath the site. You can see that, as you said, there's pressure onto black. There's a refrag under. Doki drove himself round, got a bit of revenge. You've got the trader for the Solace, and she will be more impactful holding onto these map and these sites. Think of all the soft, think of the plant play, and think of what could be done against it.
Doki's trying to see what he can get done downstairs on the hunt. Once again, it's Benja taking away the nades with him as well. That's not ideal on this map. So much soft flooring that can unsettle the defenders. The Geisha inside of Karaoke. Let's make this one count, which I think it simply is not going to unless it goes a bit deeper. It is not. And that is all the fishing that G2 can do in this round.
Yeah, losing obviously Benja underneath, who has been an absolute wizard with those. It means that the pressure has to come elsewhere. They open up the top black. They're making sure that once upon a time it was a rotate, but I'm not sure if that truly popped off. There was an impact.
It did get it,
halfway through. No, yeah, it's connected. They're on the top black. The Talon shield is going to creep its way around. They're trying to find themselves all the way across. They have the rotate angle and they have the deployment. They have to make sure that they can try and stop this. No time. They rotate themselves closer. The impact doesn't go far enough. There's 3 kills. Suddenly, Shinka, all alone, doesn't really have much in the
against
pockets.
4 though, Emmy.
I mean, he did it before. It's that worry, the smoke. A little too late, but what else can he do?
He's got a player on window here as well. The chance he wins this one out is going to be absolutely ludicrous. He's trying to fight his way up black stairs where there are 2 players from G2 just ready and waiting. Gets one gone. A much better team-driven round from G2. 4 players focusing around Karaoke and top black and giving them the control they needed. Once the plant was inside, I think that's when Wolves were panicked a little bit, like, oh God, we can't stop him. We have to push now. But G2 had the crossfires ready.
It was G2, it was almost like, oh, there you are. After that first map, you want an appearance. You want teams to hit their stride, and it was clean, it was concise, it was all of the players. They were in a position to trade out the loss underneath as well. They had themselves with their heads in this game. And if that's the difference of, as sort of Jack said, this is them on Sky versus that was them on Bank, fair enough. But I still think you got to make sure that you don't just win the map, you've got to lock Wolves out of it.
100%. Kitchen and Barbecue, they're not normally the go-to second site. Exhibition normally comes in as the pick, or potentially even a repick, of Karaoke and T, but maybe Wolves just acknowledging there in that first round already, look, G2 have got answers. It's their map. They know how to attack into the primary site that every team plays. What if we go to one that feels a little bit less ordinary and force them to have to work through more steps? Because Kitchen and Barbecue often plays out similar to maps like Reading and Fireplace on Cafe. You have to work your way through the top floor first, clear out any would-be roamers, get map control, then you start looking for the control below on site, and then you can try and make a plan happen.
I mean, if I'm stepping in for Tim today whilst he's a bit ill, I've got to bring some Timisms. Maybe they're just hungry, mate. I see him on stage and they're hungry for a win.
And the only winner is the viewer in that situation.
And the only winner is the viewer. Doki, he's starting the approach underneath. We saw him have a couple of scrappy engagements on Bank. He wasn't quite able to make the full use of the guns the way he has throughout this tournament so far. So, can he step back in with a little bit more panache? Oh, what are you doing?
Yep. He's fancying it. See the foot. I don't know if he saw the foot on the other side of this one as well. P4 being pushed by 2 or 3 players. They get in and get 2 kills. It's a fast plant from G2, catching Wolves on the back foot. It's down to a 3 versus 3 though. Top control being established. They've got the hatch, but it's too late because the plant is down and G2 still have the numbers advantage. Rise back 1 into a 2 versus 2 as Bibu gets one more. Virtue, 4 and 0 on the map, has got to hold it all down.
He's got it from range. They're trying to find the player. They don't know if it's the window. They don't know if it's the door, but it's the swing round, the smoke. They're just trying to force him far away. The flash, the ping of the E1D.
He's got to go.
He's got to move. You've got to get yourself into the fight. The calls are there. The pressure. He cannot connect. A sneaky plant and a sneaky defusal. A good play of the canisters to buy the space. The cover of the audio, massively important there. And a bit too late to put the pressure on.
They've been doing enough to body block there as well, I think. You know, it was, for a second, looked like he was going to get hit through the remaining soft wall. Half of it was reinforced off, but they just about managed to make it work out. Looking real scrappy, but G2 almost completely catching Wolves off guard. And I wouldn't be shocked if they'd seen the hatch in Geisha still closed and said, oh, they haven't got hatch control. No one's playing hatch. We're safe to go in the window here and just go and hit site. It was, again, a really good team-based execute, just couldn't hold on to the bitter end.
I mean, it's something you've always got to realize and compare as well, is what did we see on the rush plant attempt from G2 on the previous map? Not good. Their last take was pretty much a last attempt where they didn't even really have any idea of where the players of Wolves were. This time they made sure that was a lead in. They were still winning fights. They're 50-50s. You never quite know if one player is going to have that impact, and it's much more likely in that situation. It was a good read and response there from Wolves, but it's still a bit of a warning knock on the door.
Karaoke and T for round number 3. No Ossa on side this time round. G2 feel they've kind of played that card already, and that Wolves may well spot a repeat if it is on the way. So here they're going back to a much more conventional kind of lineup. Once again, they're looking to do some fishing with those 4 frag grenades in the back pocket of Alamau and Doki. I think it was Benja previously playing on the Nook who found himself taken out, and maybe with the, I don't want to say the Not's confidence, but clearly him having a quiet day, want to put Alamau on that duty instead. Bibu, the one looking to stop them though.
Can they get the hunt down on the Solus? Obviously, if anyone knows that pressure's coming from drones and intel, it will be them. It becomes problematic because you can never really surprise one that's playing with a good read-through. Alamau's doing his best, but the gadget would get spotted by a Solus. You've always got that awareness now. There's no such thing as an even fight against someone who's perpetually watching. And it's always that little shy away, buried underneath a similar location to where he was before. He's still got some confidence. He rotates his way back down towards the windows, thinks it's still closed, and he's buying and breaking time here.
Again, a little bit of play coming out from G2 here with, I think it's Blur, probably knows. Ben just sat on the drones this time around, trying to drone Alamau through, who's now going to rotate away. I think not one to try and establish control of Sushi on the downstairs. They've already got a foothold on the upstairs with 2 or 3 players working in. So trying to sweep across from east across to west rather than trying to strictly work in from below seems to be the game plan.
Now, this is the great divide, the most standard take and attack for this that you'll see generally with the changes towards the top of Black and how teams hold is breaking down across Dragon, putting the pressure onto Drum, trying to clear themselves around Gold, and then going at Geisha at the same time. There's still the pressure. As I said, Solus, you're thinking of so much soft floor, you're thinking of not a huge amount of places to hop your way up for safety. They have to be aware of this and they have to lock it down. Alamau just leads in, gets entirely picked apart. Bibu, right place, right time, and this time there isn't a quick response. Doki is underneath. Benja moves his way across. Doki's in a scrappy fight around the prep line on the back end. They meet an electric wall, and he can't get out the door. Mowgli's there, offering Bibu some support that was not there before.
And that gives them the downstairs control. They've got a C4 in back pocket for Mowgli to make it happen. Not like it's needed here, because Wolves are deleting the side of G2 when it comes to gunfights. Only Blur and Virtue, the two backline players left standing to face off against 4. P4 gets a kill through a full white flash. Virtue left alone. We've seen this one before, Emmy, but I don't think even he can do it against the onslaught of Wolves here. 3 left standing. No, he cannot. Wolves take round 3, and it's looking exactly the same as Bank, with Wolves taking a 2-1 start in the first 3 rounds.
It was very well put together there. The changes, obviously, it was a different attack. There you go. How dare you?
I'm the coach. Don't you dare.
How dare you do that to Liloon?
Liloon's wrath will follow.
Yeah, but it was the adaptations. I like that Mowgli came down to offer support. Remember last time, sure, Bibu got the first, but because of the amount of players there, he was picked apart from behind. They had a support line for him. They had the bottom. They really sort of gave an idea of we're going to fight over here, but the take from G2 just couldn't find the hole on the approach.
It started strong in round 1, when I feel like G2 had an agreed strategy to play behind the Oster, to put everything behind that plan. It worked well. But in that round then again, things just felt a little bit solo bolo, you know? You had Alamau on the downstairs by himself. He got in initially, rotated out the building, came back in, got picked up for free. Doki was a similar story. They never got to use the utility they brought in the round, the 4 grenades, to really make an impact, because there was no team effort to get control of downstairs to begin with. Wolves for me at the minute look far more like a team playing together. G2, even with the break between this map and the previous one, haven't quite got that online. I wouldn't be shocked if after the next round, assuming G2 lose it, Fabian steps in for one of those famous team talks.
It's also that sort of factor of, if you're playing behind Oster, if you're playing behind Monty, if you're playing behind something that is unique to a push, the push has to be coordinated. It forces a team's hand in terms of, well, I can't stray too much. It's like leashing the players via strategy. And when that starts to go a little bit awry is when we see G2 go a little bit awry. Here, yeah, that's pretty standard. The wall is currently open. They can try and impact back against it. They can try and put pressure back against it. It means breaching it's much trickier. They start here.
Gotta be careful.
On the opposite end, but entirely that. You know, how many times have we seen teams, including G2, just shoot out of it?
The thing is, you got away with it the first time, and I think on the defensive side, they're looking for some impact tricking. You got Valkyrie, for example, ready to start tossing them out when it comes round to it, but not in position, and Doki will get this wall opened up.
He's not sure just where the fight's coming from, but Alamau is. Wins out against the first. P4's got the chassis for support on one side. If he gets picked out, it'll be a risky fight to take, but does Doki know? That's the trade-off. That's the moment right now, is there's nothing forcing P4 to move. He can sit and wait as long as nothing's coming up underneath him from the hatch or any intel puts him on a pressure position. He's not safe, but for now, he feels it.
Well, this is the thing. I was going to comment on this before we just got shown that overhead by the observers. Really, there's only one player playing outside of sight right now for Wolves, and that's the one that's playing at top shrine. Rise going quite aggressive, looking to get a bit cheeky. A couple more steps, and he might just find the player, sees him. But the MPX is a bit of a pea shooter. Can't finish player off, and he gets away with that one quite lucky. And there's Alamau for the step back in.
I mean, he found himself against the locked soft door. I think he thought that was an escape route. Unfortunately, he had forgotten what the board said. A 5 versus 3. They have loads of time.
They do. They did well. They found Mowgli early, right? And Rise has then gone a bit over-aggressive by himself, trying to be a bit of a backstab. Bibu finds one back, but again, you know, there's 2 players on site, with Bibu currently off the one looking to contest and be the, oh, hey, you need to drone me, you've got to come clear Dragon. G2 have been sat here now for 1 minute and 20. Dragon is still Wolves' control.
And that's the thing here. This is the problem with G2. They're forcing motions, they're forcing abilities, they're trying to drive themselves through. Bibu is forced further and further back. Shinka, he's moved into the dead space where P4 was. He starts trying to hit the hammer home, but a very quick trade. Back on from Benja. Bibu.
Oh, sure.
The last French statement, a 2 versus 1. They have one more! A 1 versus 1, and it is a Bibu round!
Fabian is gonna be furious. What a play by Bibu, though, working his way back into sight. We mentioned that he hadn't been droned and forced away from playing around Shrine. I think G2 is getting a little bit too assumptive in these rounds that areas of the map are clear without checking it. And they're leaving room for the members of Wolves to work their way back into this game. G2 in attack timeout, and I can see from here, Fabian looks pretty livid.
I mean, understandably.
Very understandably.
It's the second one over this period of time. Bibu, he's working on intel, and it's a great gun. Have a look at the faces on the players. The Boo buff.
I can't help but again pull back to, for Benja having a real rough series here. I think he's got 3 or 4 kills to his name across the 2 maps, and it's not about one player. For G2, it's been the maps. I keep on saying it, they keep playing individually. They aren't droning things out. We saw it in one of the earlier rounds on this exact map with the kitchen execute. Things weren't necessarily, fully droned out or understood where players were. We saw it in the last round of Bank. We've just seen it again, where Bibu has been able to get a 4K. I think that's now 5 clutches across this series, by the way, for Wolves.
Yeah.
It's a little bit silly, but when a team is this motivated and on their game on the day, you have to find a response, and so far, G2 simply do not have one.
It's like one of the things said about Astralis is you can never tell Astralis when a round is over.
No.
They're just going to play it to the end, play it to the teeth. And that is what Wolves are doing. They have that mentality. They have that idea of every single round is possible. Do not tell me the odds. The odds are stacked more and more in their favor. It doesn't matter how close the round is at the end of the day. It's who takes the round is the scoreboard driver. It's 3-1. And there's all the woulda, coulda, shoulda. But if you can't, then you can't. And you have to move on. You have to try and piece that back together. That could be the last team talk they'll be able to have throughout this entire tournament.
Yes, unless Wolves really, start feeling the burn from G2 now, and it's Wolves who take their first tap time out of the series. But obviously right now, when you're up 3-1, there is zero need to do that. I don't imagine we'd see one until the second half anyway, because Wolves know they've got G2 on the back foot. Here we go with a little focus and lucky bounce off the door as well. Bit of a burnt nade there from Doki, gonna get nothing done. Second one comes through and door is now finally opened. We are, of course, attaching in towards kitchen and barbecue. And Benja with it sounds cruel, but an uncharacteristic entry against Mowgli.
I mean, they need it. They need that little bit of magic. They need that little bit of energy. I cannot imagine how hard it is to step up onto this and play. And
there he is, Benny boy.
Removed the man of the previous moment, and suddenly Benja has some of this control. Remember how little they had last time because they went for that rush plant and the vertical cost them. Benja!
Oh, Benja!
Well, Fabian has slapped a bit of energy. Can he go for the 4th? They don't even want to risk it. Shinka, he pulls himself out of there, but Benja isn't ready to let this fight go away from him. Please, I'm hungry, and Alamau says, don't worry. I'm happy to have the bite on the side myself. Shinka, well, we've had
no throw, boys, no throw.
Please, G2.
They've got to know where he is as well. There we go! Wow! What an answer by Benja, by the way. 4K in the round? It's like he heard us.
I mean, he's doubled his kills from the whole series.
in one round. In one single round.
And that's the sort of thing is, that G2 attack, what we've just seen there, that's how they can attack this map. That's them with everything going to plan. That's them almost doing it, not in this room, but in the back, in a scrim, in a practice, in a prep, where there's no eyes on them. And they need to get that mentality. They need to almost shake off the weight of this room. Sorry, everyone here. And pretend none of you exist.
I think actually it was Blur that got the final one from the upstairs, but who's counting? Still a big round overall for G2. It is a flawless round, one that Wolves will put in the back of their memory and right off. If they let G2 back into this at 3-3, they will be kicking themselves. They must have felt like they've been the better team across the series. When it comes to team play, gunmanship, everything has looked stronger. But if G2 can battle back in here, what a series that'll set us up for.
All right, G2, we're back to plan B-ish. We've got some of the catch, some of the chance at finding the players underneath. You've got some of the eyes and ideas on it as well. No Ossa, no Tuck, Black take. You can still put the pressure there, but I still think a lead-in game is going to be the most important step here. How do you find Bibu loose last time around? How do you see if the support is there from Mowgli? And what do you do if things start to slip away?
Well, their answer here is going to be repeat what happened last time around and pray that you don't fall away. For the side of Wolves, though, obviously, I've said it for a number of times, they have been winning out in these gunfights so far. It's kind of what I said earlier on about teams being, 50% below or 50% above on a given day. On bank, Wolves were that team that were 50% ahead. At least in that last round, you're starting to see Benja become on that right side of 100 as well, starting to really push the envelope for his team.
Ooh, it's a little bit of a pressure situation here, Mowgli.
It was a Benja 4K, by the way, my bad.
All right,
Benja,
he's
let's
holding
go.
on, but Benj is almost the first off the board, but it's the swing from Alamau. He's gone even deeper and somehow escapes Rise. You can see it on his face. He's kicking himself for not quite getting that trade back. It was a very risky maneuver for just the camera there, mate. And it hasn't cost him. I know, that's it.
They're so stacked up around top red right now as well, looking to cause a little bit of bother. But for G2, they've backed away. They said, look, if you want to push really aggressively into this, so be it. Wolves are now spread out at least a little bit more, but you've got one, for example, on Shrine, one just inside top red doorway, one below Drum. They are trying to stop G2 getting across from this east side here without directly contesting it.
That's it. A smoke canister gets thrown through. They can see the drones. They know that there's the whiff of pressure, but with the Solus underneath, you still got to deal with that problem. It's something that is always going to harp on, and it seems like that's the rotate. The idea, Virtue's going to go hunting. They have a grenade, and they have a ping on Rise, holding a very aggressive position. He has to know there's danger coming through, and he has to know it's now focused on him to drop the fight over the Dragon stairs from bottom to top. There's pressure coming on the window, and there's Shinka getting one out. Virtue's now rotated his way around to the top of Black on the back end. He's trying to draw the players away. There's a fight for Benja's side. Shinka's gone, a bit of revenge. A scrappy one on the top of Black stairs. Bibu, he's trying to make things feel bad for G2 on this approach, that it can't be that comfortable. Yeah,
Benja's been sat on the window looking inside a site for the longest time, just waiting for members of the defense to move around. Alamau is feeling himself a little bit as well. Bibu just get a trade, but it's down to a numbers advantage for G2, and assuming we don't see what we've seen so many times this season.
I know, it's like
we could have that 3-3 half.
Assuming we don't see it again and again
and again
and again.
And again.
They have 30 seconds. They have themselves a little bit spread out. Bibu is dancing from stair set to stair set. How aware are they? A little bit, but look at the damage done to Virtue there. It will not take much to get rid of Virtue and Benja at this point, and you've got to try and slip your way past the watch on the back end. And again,
time.
I cannot mention it enough. Time, the combination of the player underneath. They've got to try and find themselves. There he is on the hunt for the diffuser. There he is waiting for the time. There he is spraying and getting the drop down. There's only a pocket full of seconds left. Can they even get it in time? He's just got to hold F. It's a trade out. It is a Bibu Solus underneath looking for the player. Benja, he's gone!
And again.
And again.
And again.
And you know how many times you say it. You talk about that. You talk about Solus. You talk about the importance. They know it. They tried to hunt her down twice before. The only safe place to plant in the entire setup of those two sides is on Gold's table.
Yeah.
They didn't drive for the fight there, so they have to drive for the fight on the Solus. You can't just assume that she's not paying attention, because it's Bibu, and at the start of the round, he was 7-2.
He's got 3 kills in that round, right? At least the one that he came up on red stairs, and then managed to collect 2 more as well. Like, he's made it look, easy. He's been given so much movement there in the close, despite having the numbers advantage for G2. But it again comes back to what you were saying. Think back to the early rounds when we were saying, look, Bibu's been left downstairs. Alamau's kind of contested him and died. They've got no vertical control. They can't go fishing with their grenades. It's frustrating because G2 can play for that team level of play where it means they get to clear areas out of the map together. But they're keeping it kind of at step 1 here. Yep. Focusing on shrine control, for example, looking to set up in kitchen, but ignoring what's happening on the vertical axis above them or below them.
It makes it awkward because they even drove the fight. And you've got to think about the context of things there is they went to try and take the fight on Gold as the timer pretty much ticked out. But it didn't matter. Even if they won that clean, it did not matter. They wouldn't have been able to still win that round based on what was still up. And it's those decisions, the time it seems to be taking G2 to reach them is costing them round after round after round. After
another round. We'll just carry on. Here we go then. Wolves move on to the attacking side of the map and get to show us their fangs and how much quicker they can be than G2. We commended their pinch play on the previous map of Bank. Very good at isolating players and forcing 2v1s, and G2 played into it for them as well. It was like playing with their food at that point. I think you may well wind up seeing a lot more here. I know it's not their map pick, but given the theme we've seen across 2 halves of defense, 1 half of attack for Wolves, you can see it really starting to become a trend.
It's pacey. And that's sort of those little moments where you go, maybe Wolves are happy attacking this. This was always the big question mark on this showdown and this map, is how confident will Wolves be? We know what G2's game is like. We know what G2 does on Bank as well, and it's not the greatest, but they can do it. Here on Sky, as Fresh has sort of pointed out, it was one of their consistent bans. It was one of their removals for a long time, and regardless of how far ahead you are, if you're not feeling confident, this can be a very sticky map to try and attack and approach.
Couple playing upstairs at the minute, I think. One inside of T, one holding up in Geisha, 3 around site itself for G2, but currently more proximity off. Heavy drone game from Wolves coming in at the top of red as well, just to feed this information in for P4 to take the ground that he needs. And the funny thing is, I mean, we said at the start of the series, if P4 is quiet, this could be really rough, but as it stands so far, you're seeing all the work being done by Bibu. A lot of the strength in this team is that, okay, you don't need the 2 entries to shine when you've got Shinka who can clutch up for fun, Rise who can pop off an equal measure, and Bibu, as we've seen a number of times, especially in Stage 3, is the highest rated player. All of them can pop.
Wolves have set themselves up around and they're starting to execute. They're looking for a first engagement. The bounce of the nades, the pressure onto Doki actually catches the tail end of Blur through the soft wall. The grenade was close enough. They have the pings on the player. They know he's down and they're just going to cement it elsewhere. In the meantime, Rise goes. Mowgli is able to put some damage into Gold itself with Bibu finding the end of Alamau. So Blur still down and he is so far from recoverable. Doki has to fight his way out. Puts us in a tricky situation. They still haven't been able to cement the pick back up here. They haven't been able to cement the kill either, because Virtue's making things happen. Wolves, they tried to collapse, but they couldn't quite make it happen.
It's a 2vx. You'll forgive me for being nervous for G2 in this scenario as well. Yeah. After this series, I honestly don't know what to believe anymore about number disadvantages. The only thing really helping G2 here is the clock. The hatch is being held. They've got 1 or 2 playing at distance as well. They look ready for this step in. They find one. There's just one left. Bibu will get a kill, but it feels too little too late. Has got a Gumine in the foot, a plant in hand. There is nothing he can do. G2 will take round 7.
They hold off. But you have to sort of look at that round and you have to think how much of it was down to winning engagement, something they didn't really have before. Wolves did drift into a couple of the fights, but they also got lucky with a couple of them too. There was some missed moments. You can never forget about that. Here, Wolves went for the 2-story collapse at the same time. They had the pressure coming up here with Shinka on the back end. They tried to win the fight over the top of Gold, of Drum, of the main stairs itself. And some of those went away. The work done by Virtue, the control of the second story is the only reason the first did not fall.
See how round number 8 goes down then. Wolves now attacking in towards Karaoke and T up here on the top floor. But the 2 Funky coming out in their selected lineup for the operators as well. Again, we saw the Ossa execute coming out of G2, which was fantastic. We've seen teams play a lot of Monty on this site as well for the exact same purpose. Is it just gives you coverage from the very difficult long-range angles out towards Shrine, down towards Red Stairs, can really, really help you out. But no massive changes coming in outside of a couple of changes to who is playing what. I'd love to know the reason for this as well, why P4 is going from Ashe onto Iana, Mowgli from Iana onto the Ashe. Main reason being I can think of is, again, the nades from below. We spoke about G2 going fishing, and they want Mowgli to be the one who's not having to pick up that duty. They want him being a little bit more busy by himself on the Ashe.
It's like the trade-off, is you're thinking, well, it's not about the guns and it's not about the drive here. It's more about what they want to try and accomplish.
What do the players want to do?
Yeah. And if you've got Mowgli potentially trying to hit heads against bulletproofs and shields in the far end, then, well, you can do it with a grenade, but it's kind of easier to get the swing round and a bit less dangerous to do it with the pop of the gadget of Ashe. Vice versa, as you said, the grenades underneath, it's a big part of the play here, potentially. You're looking at a hard wall, you're looking at control of maybe that wall and getting rid of, if there is a mute jammers, if there is electrics, you know, it's that sort of trade-off.
G2 playing quite deep out into the map here as well, quite far out from site itself. Still got hold of Exhibition, but have to be careful, because we've said before, walls can be very good at shutting the jaws. Snap down onto your neck, and they've caught 2 players, G2, overhanging and being punished.
I mean, Mowgli, he's feeling this round. He hasn't quite been able to have the same drive in throughout this, but with Blur shutting him down from the range, again, we're seeing this a little bit more on this map. From what was an entirely solid idea of where G2 were on the previous one, what they had for breakfast and where they wanted to be, here, there's little sparks of that, but not quite the full read. Virtue, he steps in and gets locked out. He's trying to buy Alamau the break back through. He gets 1 rip and tear, but think about where he is. Think about where the site is, and think about how many people are left. If Alamau gets caught out, it's a 1 versus X, and they're really far away from any support right now. A slow.
Doubled up.
Yeah, they might be able to get the player back up. You have to slip your way across. If they've gone undroned, it's dangerous. If they've gone droned, it's bait.
I think they're trying to hold for it here, but Blur has been an anchor around Drum. He's found a few kills from this angle so far in the game. The call coming out will give the indication they need. They just know, G2 just know that if they go for Virtue, there's a very good chance that someone's waiting, holding an angle. It is Shinka, daring him to cross. They might just have to let him go here. He makes the run, gets sprayed down, but not taken out. Down to a slither of HP. Blur's here for the cover as well. Good team play, yes, Blur! That's what you want to see. A big 3K coming out, and G2 finally seem to have unlocked that thing called team play, and a massive 4K out of Blur.
Bring it on, Blur. Main stage, you're not always the biggest mainstay name you find yourself screaming out, but if that player on that back end with that gun that is a surgeon's tool in the right hand can do the business. Think about his first 2 kills there. Through the same hold, the same angle of just watching people rotate, like shooting French fish in a Blur barrel.
A very big Blur barrel. It seems to be every kill came for the same spot, except this final little bit, and I was really happy to see that small bit of team play coming together. When he moves away from his anchor position down towards Drum, realizes actually our win condition right now isn't holding down Drum, it's making sure we've got 3 guns online and able to shoot. Great rotation over, and again, G2 looking like they've really started to get things back together. A tactical timeout coming in. Lilu got a few words for the troops. G2 have brought the score even at 4-4.
It's time to have the talk. It's time to see if they can try and piece this together. As we said, this is Fabian's moment as well, and you know what he's seen these past couple of rounds, he's obviously much happier with. He couldn't have been sadder with what he saw before. And it's never a question of what rounds could they have won. That's something you can do in VOD reviews, you do after the game. You have to get into the mindset of this is what we're doing right now. It's 0-0.
Yeah.
We've pulled it back level. We're fighting for every single round.
And you got the defense.
And you got the defense.
Yes. I think really the big thing to focus on when you come to those tactical timeouts isn't the micro, the small, oh, you need to play better on this drone and do A, B, and C. No, it's much more about the macro. If the team aren't working together, not communicating what's going to change, you leave the players to figure it out in the server themselves what gameplay changes need to be made. Now, one thing I'll say, and I can say the same about Wolves, to be fair, there have been a lot of clutches in this game.
Yeah.
A lot of big 4Ks, a lot of big 3Ks, a lot of 1v1s being won. It is still quite tight, although Wolves generally have had a better control, especially when Bibu's sat on 12 and 3 so far on the map, going unbelievably strong. But you look over to that other side, and there's probably a blessing here that you've got Virtue, Blur, and Alamar all dropping big numbers, while Doki and Benja have been a little bit quieter, but the whole board is starting to come online.
I think that's the thing is, I would say Benja's stepped up in this map compared to the last one. He's found a bit of confidence. He's pretty much even. He's a little bit above, and Doki is the only one that's slipped a bit further away. He's fishing. He's got a bite on the line, but it's not for his to have right now.
Sort of passing by, at least for now, but you know, he can try and get a bit cheeky and just wait to see if there are a rotate that does come in on the upstairs. Mowgli just more securing things and making sure there's no horrible jump outs. That's an interesting one that he dropped down there, expecting someone to come vaulting over the edge of that balcony.
If anyone will, Alaba will.
They'll have seen G2 do this as well. There's probably a very specific reason that's there. Doki strikes was the kind of player that would make a play like that, so I do not fault them at all.
G2, a couple of rounds, you've been able to pull yourself together, but still far from over, and you know this just as well as they do.
Retreat their way back up there as well into house. You know, feel the pressure starting to come in on the downstairs and don't want anything to do with it.
You don't want to hand them freebies. No. You don't want to hand them those engagements far away, because we've seen Wolves do very excellent pinches and pincers. They know how to try and force a player into another player's gun. And it seems like G2 have had much more sort of respect for that game and the fear of it.
Only a little nervous here for them because they have pulled back to site super early.
I think there is one loose player on the opposite end.
There's always one.
Here it is. There's the...
Is it? It's not Virtue, is it?
It's Doki. Doki, has he gone known? There's a slow swing around. Doki wins it out. Gets the lock in. There's a second player trying to make their way back over. Does he know? Oh, he does, but Mowgli gets one, and there it is. One of yours, 2 of ours.
That's one of the first times this series I've seen that triangle coming online that I was speaking about for G2 as well. Doki goes down, there is an immediate response. Think back to Bank top floor when Doki was left completely isolated and alone. It's a good bit of team play coming through, and they are punishing Wolves by making them realize we cannot leave players undroned and ignored.
Well, we've seen them do it before, and again, but that's not the moment right now. This is obviously Wolves with a timeout. This is Wolves thinking, well, things are slightly falling off. We have to try and pepper and fight our way back through their first of the series. In the 4 versus 3, what are they trying to shape up here? They've lost some of their lead in engagement. When we talked about what do you trade those operators for? Well, that utility's gone. Instead, it's got to be a direct drive. It's a swing round for Benja. Finds Bibu on the back end, and Shinka and Rise. Well, if the back line of Blur has been a big step up this map, it's time for them to see if they can step in. Knocked instantly out. Shinka all that's left, with 3 standing players in front of him and only 10 seconds. G2, please do not throw this.
They really don't need to do anything here as well. Shinka can't win it out. He hasn't got the time. And they just wait and let him come to them. Bibu made a play on Shrine. I don't blame him. They really needed some map control because the last 2 players were stuck looking at display, looking at the exhibition wall. It just was not an ideal spot for Wolves. And really on the back of this man, Doki killing 1, drawing in another, giving Alamau a freebie, and that really unlocked things for G2.
That first fight reminds me of Doki playing Iana in the first map. It shouldn't have been Doki's win there. The P90 is a hell of a gun in the right hands, but he wasn't instant with the lock in there. It was scrappy. The Iana, from what we've seen previously, could have, should have won it.
Yeah.
And they didn't quite have that energy. And it's almost like Wolves are suffering the same thing, the same fear of the stage, the same fear of the map, more than anything, I would say, as G2. They've crept their way back into this one round at a time.
Again, it's one of them where if P4 was on fire today as well, Doki shut down there. They've got the numbers advantage. They're swinging around to pick up Alamau as well. The round probably goes the way of Wolves. So, again, G2 starting to believe here. You've got the vast majority of their players now all going positive in KD as well.
Do you believe yet, Mr. Dez?
On defense on their own map at 5 and 4, yeah, I think this goes to Oregon. I do think it goes all the way now. Sorry, all the way.
All the way, Dez. It won't
I have to say, if we do get to...
Oh, I know.
You have to say it. It's
I know.
a thing.
Anything for Tim. 5-4. G2, as I said, it's been around and around and around. They've tied 3 in a row.
Tell you what, this feels like a throwback. Ash and Zofia on the same size.
Yeah, I mean...
Feels like a thing from 3 years ago.
What year is this? Last time in Montreal.
2020, yeah, God.
You just don't see Zof too much. Obviously, we had some of the LMG Zofia, but Ash at that point was a bit behind the curve with, well, Finka with other LMGs. What are they trying to fix here? Are they trying to put some pressure around on the side? Do they think they know enough about where players are rough and they want to get a little bit more of that precise before they go for swings? I mean, the swings are happening quite early here.
It's the soft destruction, right? They've got so much of it on side, plus 6 sets of it's a bit much. 6 Claymores plus a Nomad for me.
It's a lot.
A little bit much, especially
It's
when you
fear.
haven't... Yeah, you haven't seen G2 jumping out of windows and stuff, but
No.
this is where Wolves are saying, right, they're building in confidence here. We are expecting some aggression. We need to be careful about this. You can hear the air jabs as you run around the map here, just really trying to pen G2 in and just over the course of the round, shrink that box down more and more until they're stood on top of each other and it's an easy round win for Wolves. But that does require pace, and that's something that may be a little bit lacking here for the French side.
Hot droned in, Mowgli's trying to find the engagement. Last time he was putting the pressure upstairs and it didn't quite come together. So instead they've sort of picked him up, swapped him out with, I think it was P4, was here last and moved the grenades. Lean in with the guns. He was pretty sharp with it throughout this tournament. There's the start, the burn through, the shock, the destruction. There's no one close. They have the breach on the barb and they pull away. Also a different tact. Last time they went for, as I said, multiple different angles at the same time. It seems like they want to try and strong-arm it a little bit more with less as they're sort of rode in.
There's just so many Claymores and air jabs going down. Like, it's ludicrous. It feels like they're trying to build a web of Claymores that all connect to one another. It's at that sort of level. It isn't stopping Blur being quite a challenger here, though. On towards Kochek, sees one cross, but a little bit late to the punch.
Yeah, has to drop down. He's got the rotate out if he wants to do it, but the first trade is over the back end. P4 can't get the cement. It's Doki with a double, and Bibu is able to get one on the back end, but he's still in the bar, and there he is! Pops up, pops them down! Blur gets the end of it. Doki said he wants to destroy him, and that round is the first bit we've seen from the Scotsman.
The first real big round coming out of Doki that we've seen throughout the entirety of groups and playoffs. Finally starting to come online. You know, I really feel the observers have done P4 dirty. They showed everything that went wrong there. He steps across, whips every single shot, has to reload, can't do anything, and Doki collects an absolute freebie onto him. You know, again, we do kind of like highlighting players and how they're underperforming, but for P4 there, Doki should be dead to rights every day of the week.
Fabian even kissed him on the head.
I just heard someone to the right of me just go, "Aw." It's a very loving moment, I'm sure. But again, they know that, you know, Fabian, we've seen some really interesting timeouts, but we know that he's always on their side. He always is, because he knows what they can do, he knows what they can deliver, and he only expects the best.
Oh, he has never once said they're not the best team.
No.
When things are going wrong, when things are going right, you heard it in his timeouts. Like, on the back line, the statement that he kept on sort of prophesizing and putting down was, we showed people we can be the best team, and we are the best team at this tournament. We just have to get to the end. You can't argue with the lower bracket run. You can't argue with the fact that they've dispatched a lot of people in this tournament. And sure, they might have been sent there by a certain team that they're in a map with right now, but this certain team might be another name on the big board of G2's victims.
Very possibly so. I mean, let's not write Wolves off just yet. Oregon is still awaiting for both teams. That is going to be a real spicy matchup. Very excited to see if, of course, we get there. Wolves still have a chance to battle their way back in. I know it's been quiet for most of their players on this map. Everyone except Bibu's currently going negative as well. But that's what you want from a stage when it comes around to being here live on a big stage, is to have a nice close fixture. At least as a fan, the players will take a 2-0 every day of the week.
About 40 seconds passed. It's slightly more cautious, the approach, but remember how many people died just drifting across this open space. They have to pay it a little bit more respect.
And they have.
And they have.
G2, like, remember last time round, Mowgli got a 2K by going in through single wall. G2 have back past Dragon, back past Shrine, back past Terrace. They're off towards sighting around Drum. Kind of fallen back to the second line of defense, but they've forced drones and utility out of wall. So a lot better from them now. Yeah,
it was a huge round for Blur as well. He was sort of happy to hold, but he was only probably holding that position because they lost so much else. Usually, Drum will be your sort of first gun, and Mowgli is the first gun for Wolves, and he's trying to see if anybody's home. Not a true reveal as of yet, but with the gate, with the bait, with the call, they'll know that it's coming sooner rather than later. You would hope G2's aware of this.
Yeah, I mean, they know that they were trying to push it on the east side, which means if they're committing resources towards getting Exhibition off its control, they'll then move across towards Drum. They'll then look to try and hit the site more laterally than trying to make a play, for example, and rotating everyone over towards Window or towards Top Black. You might see someone try and backstab up there that later in the round, but they haven't cleared downstairs. They have no information. That would be a massive risk for Wolves. So almost in a way here, G2 are predicting everything that's coming at them, and they've got the right idea because Wolves are playing quite tightly, like a pack of Wolves, quite ironically here, and trying to all come in as one.
Can they scream their way onto site? Gold is only really what stands. It's going to have to be the cover to stop a swing coming through and the smoke canister. Mowgli's just waiting. Doki is being droned out, but he knows if he stops to fight it, chances are there's going to be a gun right behind him. The break on the electrics pops off. They can get the wall open and they can keep forcing space. There's 40 seconds left on the push, but look at how they're stacked up. G2, they've got to win these engagements either side. Virtue gets one, Blur with the second. Snap. That's it, the support structure, the pressure on the gold player, but suddenly they do not have those guns to drive themselves in. Rise gets one more. 20 seconds, though.
Absolutely snapping their ankles on the way through here. Virtue and Blur going absolutely nuclear. 10 and 4 for Virtue, and he seems to have that answer at every turn. Benja's there as well. Rise left standing, but can do nothing. G2 take map 2, which means Oregon will be our final battlegrounds.
We knew they had the capabilities, they knew it just as well, and it was always going to be a fight across the board. This is one of the few times these two teams haven't gone to OT.